Story number 1. He found out where I lived. This has probably been one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me. I figured by sharing it with all of you, then perhaps, maybe, just maybe one of you might have had something similar happen. It took place in my junior year of high school. This being in 2009, cell phones and text messaging were all the rage. You remember the times. Being in class and typing away on your phone while the teacher gave the lecture. Ah, good times. Well, one day at lunch, my friends and I decided we wanted to prank call people as a way to entertain ourselves. We started by dialing phone numbers that were in one of the yellow page books in the library. You can imagine we got a bunch of angry responses, but there was one in particular that took it a bit too far. My friend Rachel ended up making a random phone number up and then typing it into my phone. She used the same area code, mind you, but she just made the other numbers up. After a couple of rings, we introduce ourselves. After about 10 seconds of silence, somebody finally speaks up and says,
"You two kids sound pretty young. Where are you two at right now? What are your names? Hey, why don't I go over there right now so I can put you in the back of my car and make you mine? Yeah, like you'll ever find us. Come on, we dare you. Our friends are on the football team. We'll definitely teach you a lesson, you old creep." Oh, is that a challenge? I like that.
The phone then goes quiet. Very creepy. My friend and I immediately get the chills and we decide that we've had enough with the phone calls. Sadly, this would be the starting point of a lot of weird events. During my last class, I felt my phone vibrating during a presentation. Naturally, I couldn't check who it was, so I waited until I was done. During the next presenter's story, I take a peek down at my phone and I can see I have a missed call and even a voicemail. Now, at that moment, I didn't realize it, but that number was actually from the same person we contacted a couple of hours ago. You know the one that gave us that creepy message? Well, it's not until I got home an hour later I decided to take a listen to that message. And what I heard, I would never forget. It went something along the lines of this.
Hey there, Allison. So, I wanted to call you again because I wanted to tell you all about that school you go to. Garden Grove High School? That's a fine little school of yours. I've actually driven by there a couple of times myself. Maybe next time if you need a ride, you can come with me. Come on, let's have a good time together.
Wait 1 minute. How did this guy know my name? And how did he find out the high school I was attending? Sure, he could have done a reverse phone search to get my information, but who would really go out of their way to do that? One thing was for sure, this was getting serious. I ended up having my parents take a listen to the call, and soon we went to the police station. It's here they do a phone search themselves, only to find something odd. The source of the phone call. It was from an apartment complex that was on the bad side of town. See, a lot of crazy deals go down there, and it's known for its crime. Still, after talking with everybody and clearing everyone, they couldn't find the source or the person responsible. They figured that it could have just been somebody's sick idea of a joke and left it at that. Still, who goes out of their way to look up your school and your name? Well, fast forward about a year, and by this point, I no longer received any weird calls. One day I'd been at the movie theater with friends when I felt my phone vibrate. I was actually expecting a call from a teacher of mine that afternoon, so I step outside to look. Instead, it's a phone number that says restricted. Okay, whatever, wrong number. I put my phone in my pocket and I head back into the building. Moments before entering the theater, however, I feel my phone vibrate a couple of times. I take it out and I have 2 unread messages. Okay, who is it this time?
Hey, why didn't you answer my call? Don't tell me you already forgot about me. You know, I had to hide from the cops for a while after you called them on me. That wasn't very nice of you. I miss you.
Great, this lunatic was back. I felt so powerless in that moment because this guy had my phone number and I was dumb not to change it. I blocked the number again and I tried my best to forget about it. This time, I made the mistake of not getting police involved. As a couple of weeks turned into about a month, I would end up getting a bunch of calls from random numbers. They would never leave a message or say anything. I put this down to telemarketers and I decided to ultimately take a break from using my cell phone. This, however, didn't last long because a week later I decided to take it out of my drawer. There are now literally hundreds and hundreds of missed calls and voicemails from at least 3 different numbers. Yup, you guessed it. Each of the voicemails was the same creepy man from before. This time, the messages were a lot more aggressive, and he ended up describing a bunch of violent things he wanted to do to me. Finally, I had enough of this, and I decided to take matters into my own hands. I ended up calling him, to which he responds almost immediately.
Look, I'm sick and tired of these phone calls. You seriously need to stop, or I'm going to call officers. In fact, why don't I go ahead and post it on my Twitter so everybody can see what you've been putting me through? You could do that, and I would still follow you no matter where you go. You can't hide from me forever.
He doesn't say a single word after that. I deactivate my phone, and finally, I ended up changing my number. The phone calls seemingly stopped, and I no longer received any more messages. Even so, though I never met him, the months of paranoia he put me through really affected my life. For months, I struggled getting a job or even interacting with people. As for sleep, don't even get me started with that. I would have nightmares in which I would have him show up at my house in the middle of the night. Oh, and before I end my story, there were a couple of times I found these strange notes on my car windshield. Had these bunch of strange, creepy messages with them. I even found a box on my front door one time, and it had a bunch of photos of my home. One of the photos even included a photo of me. From the angle, the photo was taken right outside the living room window during the night. So, I guess this guy had found out where I lived, and he was stalking me too. Well, one thing was for sure. I never heard from him again, so I'm not too sure what happened to him. With all of that said, my question is this. Has anyone else ever had something similar like this happen to them? Please, let me know. Story number 2. Crazy man outside my window. To start my story off, allow me to present you with some background information. This was in 2002 when I was living on my own. I'm female, and at the time, I was 19 years old. This was during a time when I was attending an art school in Southern California. I'd been living in a dorm on my own for almost a year up to that point, and nothing out of the ordinary really took place. Sure, I'd get the occasional guy to want my number, but it wasn't something I really gave out. On the rare chance I did give it out, it was because I traded numbers with a classmate to help with studying. Now, as you might expect, this was during a time when cell phones weren't really popular yet, so I had to rely on using my phone in my dormitory. Anyways, it started one evening. I'd been listening to music, and I was working on an art piece. That's when my phone rang. Now, it being 9 at night, I thought it was pretty strange, but regardless, I go and pick it up.
Hello? Good evening. Who is this?
There is no response. Okay, whatever. I guess it was just a wrong number. I put the phone down and go back to working on my art piece. Fast forward around 1 a.m. By now, I'd finished drawing and I was on the couch eating a cup of noodles and watching TV. While in the middle of an episode of The Simpsons, the phone started to ring again. Annoyed, I get up and I go to answer the phone.
Hello, this is Abby. Can I help you? Sorry, you have to speak up. I can't really understand what you're saying.
Then the phone goes silent. Admittedly, that creepy breathing shook me up for the night and it made it difficult for me to go to sleep. Since the person on the other line never did or said anything, I didn't call campus security. Looking back though, that would have probably saved me a bunch of trouble. Well, the next morning I met up with 2 of my classmates, Anna and Alex. I told them about the strange phone calls. They told me they had no idea what I'd been talking about, and they promised it wasn't them. Well, the phone calls didn't stop after that. In fact, they only got worse. For the next couple of nights, I would receive multiple calls throughout the evening. They would never be at the same time, mind you, but they would each start off with the same heavy breathing, finally ending with silence. Well, one of these times, I finally had enough of being scared, and this time, I actually went ahead and spoke up.
Look, I I don't know who you are and what you want, but you need to leave me alone and stop calling me. If you don't, I'm going to call the police. Well, that's no way to treat me. Come on now, Abby, don't play hard to get. After all, that's a nice pink nightgown you're wearing. Maybe you can let me in and I can show you a good time.
That statement sent me chills, but what really made it worse were the footsteps I heard immediately after that. Something else that spooked me was the accuracy in him describing what I was wearing. It was now obvious he had been stalking me. Therefore, I went ahead and called the campus security, who showed up about 10 minutes later. They do a whole scan of the dormitory, but unfortunately, they are unable to find anyone since I really didn't have any details. I guess it also didn't help that no one had seen him. Even so, the security guards told me they would keep an extra guard around the dorms just to double check on me. One evening, things would get really bad. This time around, I had my friend Alex over, who was helping me study for a midterm. It was around 9 p.m., and eventually he got up to get some water from the kitchen. I now took the opportunity to stretch and walk around a bit. When walking over to the front window, that's when I noticed something. What sounded like tapping on the window grabbed my attention. I found this odd since I'd never heard anything like this before. With my hand shaking, I go to slowly open the curtains. That's when I finally get a good look at my stalker. Staring right back at me was this man who looked to be in his late 30s. He looked familiar, but in that moment, I couldn't tell where I had seen him. Well, what gave me chills wasn't so much him, but it was the knife he had. This was when he proceeded to give me a creepy smile, and he started knocking on the window. This sent me into full panic mode as he then started to try to take off the screen. But thankfully, the window was locked, but I was afraid he would try to open it anyways. This was when Alex finally goes into the living room, and immediately after, I go to the phone and call for police. All the meanwhile, Alex is telling this man he has to leave.
Hi, I need police here. Now. There's a man outside my dorm and he has a knife. He's trying to break in. Please, hurry. Okay, we're sending officers right now. Please stay calm and go into a restroom or a bedroom and make sure to lock your door.
Finally getting the idea, the man takes off right before officers arrive. But thankfully, another student had seen a suspicious man in a hoodie taking off into the nearby park. Officers do a search, and they're able to find him about 20 minutes later. As it turned out, he had quite the record on him, and he had been charged in the past with stalking and robbing people. Oh, and in case you're wondering, he had engraved a whole bunch of creepy messages onto my front door. Things like a phone number, and even messages like, "I want you." When calling that number, I received a message that said,
Hello. Unfortunately, this number is no longer in service. Goodbye.
Oh yeah, and one last thing to mention. I later figured out how he might have gotten my number. When giving my number to Alex, we were eating at a McDonald's. I guess he might have overheard the conversation since I remember him sitting right behind us. He gave me a really creepy vibe, and I would occasionally see him there whenever I went to get food. It's just crazy to think how far people will go sometimes. Story number 3. The Lunatics Come Out at Night. This was about 5 years ago when my girlfriend and I used to live in Chicago. We were living in a small townhouse right in the middle of the downtown. About 10 blocks from us was this pretty shady neighborhood. Our friends always told us never to go over there due to all the gang activity. And honestly, it wouldn't be surprising to hear of something happening every other day. Anyways, the one nice thing about our neighborhood was that even despite the crazies and the violence, our area saw very little activity. That's why we never worried in the 2 years that we lived there. Besides, the rent was cheap and the bus station was less than a 5-minute walk from the house. This would be where my girlfriend and I took transportation to get to our jobs respectively. My girlfriend, who we will call Jamie, was a substitute teacher, and I worked at a small banking firm. Okay, now that you know a little bit about us and where we lived, let me tell you about something that happened to Jamie. Since this didn't actually happen to me, I'll tell you about what she experienced. Though, just so you know, I was involved in the story, I just wasn't there in person until the end. Okay, so one night, Jamie had been home alone. I'd been there in the morning to look after her, but I had to go to work at 3 p.m. This meant I wouldn't get home until later in the evening. I leave her some warm soup and tea, and I head off to work. Now, let's transition to what was going on with my girlfriend Jamie. She slept throughout the afternoon, only getting up on the occasion to eat something. At around 7 p.m., it was already dark outside and she'd been watching TV. During some commercials, the house phone rang. She was pretty annoying, especially considering we'd been getting a bunch of telemarketers calling lately. She doesn't answer it at first and figures that it was just somebody trying to sell something. But not even a minute later, the phone rings again, and again, and again. Jamie gets up and she goes to answer it.
Yes, good evening. Who is this?
As she's listening to the phone, she realizes something. As a car passes the home, she can hear the same car passing over the phone. What really shocks her was when she hears a car alarm go off. Not only was the alarm going off in person, but over the phone as well. She got really creeped out by this, and immediately she ends the call. That's when she says to herself, okay, how was I hearing the same sounds over the phone and hearing that same sound in person? I must be imagining things. Yeah, that's it. About 3 minutes later, the phone rings again, but this time Jamie lets it go to voicemail.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave your message after the tone. Hey girl, I know you're home by yourself. Look outside. I'm right next to your living room window. Come on, why don't you go ahead and open that window now?
The message then ends, and Jamie freaks out. She heads upstairs to grab my Remington. She then proceeds to call me, saying somebody was outside her house.
Okay, sweetie, thanks for letting me know, but for now, you need to call officers and you need to tell them about what's happening. I'm on the way right now, so just hang in there.
What happens next, my girlfriend would never forget. While she's on the phone with officers, she hears what sounds like a window shattering downstairs.
Hi, I need police here. Right away. Someone's inside my house. Oh no. I think they're trying to get inside. Wait, I think they just got in. Please, hurry. Okay, is there anything you can put between yourself and the intruder? I'm armed, actually. What should I do? Well, if you feel like you're in danger and you have to use it, then do so. Officers are heading over there right now.
They weren't kidding when they said they were heading over there. My girlfriend tells me they got there in less than 5 minutes. Guess that's the benefit of also living near a police station. When I got there about 10 minutes later, I could see a whole bunch of police cruisers with their siren lights still on. I feared the worst as I made my way up to one of the officers. Soon, Jamie calls out to me and comes to give me a hug. I was so thankful nothing had happened to her. So, as it turned out, that guy had a lot of different things in his system. How he managed to get inside the house, you might want to know? Well, he used a baseball bat to break down the window. When he got inside, he proceeded to smash everything, all the while my girlfriend was at the ready just in case. I guess the question we have is, how did he get our phone number to begin with? Either way, we ended up moving back with my parents less than a month after, and nothing like that ever happened to us again. Story number 4. Why I never give my phone number out anymore. This is a really long story, but I want to go ahead and include as many details as I possibly can. Hopefully, and I mean hopefully, I can paint an eerie and creepy picture for you all. Anyways, this was in 2011. It was the beginning of a new semester. It was time to start over, meet new friends, and get back into the routine of studying. But even with that fresh start, it was also the beginning of a nightmare ready to happen. I'm writing into the creepy fox so that he could tell you about my experience. And just like the title of my story says, I never give my number out to anyone anymore. Anyways, let's get started. This took place about 3 years ago during my freshman year of college. It was the spring semester, and I had just come back from an awesome winter break. Oh yeah, and before I forget to mention, I'm female. I was 18 years old, and I'm fairly small to be honest. I'm about 5'3", and I weigh about 110 pounds. I mentioned this because a lot of people would mistake me for being a high schooler. That meant a lot of encounters with creeps. Okay, so Monday morning I arrived to my first class, which was empty. There was no one in the room, and I was honestly thinking I'd read my schedule wrong. Sure enough, it's for 7 a.m. Guess showing up 30 minutes before class meant, well, emptiness. After about 10 minutes of scrolling through Instagram and Facebook, I hear the door open. I now take a brief look up, and I can see an older looking man walk in. He looked too old to be a student, so I thought perhaps he was faculty. However, he starts making his way towards the seats, presumably looking for a place to sit. Whatever. Sometimes you'll get adults return to college to get their degrees. Now, out of a room of at least 150 seats, guess where he chose to sit? Not on the other side of the classroom, not behind me, but literally right next to me.
I'm really sorry to say, but you're in my seat. Can you please move over?
Excuse me, but this is the first day of class. How is this your seat?
I sat there last semester. Whatever, never mind.
He then takes a seat right behind me, and after about 2 minutes of silence, he starts talking to me again.
So, how old are you? Do you have a boyfriend? You want to exchange phone numbers so we can hang out sometime after class?
I wouldn't mind if it was somebody I knew, but not with this complete stranger. Well, one thing that really caught my attention was when he next said,
Yeah, you should have seen what I did with that last girl I was last with. How fun.
what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, it's just a joke. Forget about it.
Thankfully, more students started to show up right after that. This was when he gets up and moves to the other side of the classroom. Good, he's finally out of my way. But I'll tell you, this guy seemed really off. It's almost as if he wasn't actually a student. Anyways, the class finally starts, and our professor starts giving us the rundown on the assignments for the week. He assigns that we each get into groups so that we can begin work right away. You already know I did my best to avoid the guy behind me, as I was already feeling uncomfortable by him. I teamed up with 2 classmates right next to me. We will call them Mandy and Joseph. Okay, so naturally, there were going to be some people who didn't have groups. Next, the professor collected all the people who hadn't been assigned a group. Since we were supposed to be 4, we were expecting to get another teammate. Guess who didn't have a group? Yep, you already guessed it. Creepy guy. And of course, the professor would assign him to a group. That meant that, yep, we were forced to exchange phone numbers. Ugh, you should have seen that smirk on his face. Anyhow, the class ends and we each go our separate ways. This was when the text messages would start. And for the most part, it did start off fairly simple.
Hey, sorry if you thought I was some weird guy in class earlier. I was just joking around with you. Hopefully we can be friends and do great on this project together.
The next week or so goes by fairly normally, and we start working on our project together. But something about him was still raising my suspicion. Oftentimes, I would notice him following me around campus. One time, I even caught him taking what I thought was video of me. I was angry by this, so I went up to him and I said, excuse me, yeah, hello, could you not take pictures of me?
I wasn't taking any pictures of you. I was just, testing my camera app on my phone. Yeah, I'm not actually taking photos.
Fast forward a couple of days later, and the whole group was at the library working on the project. We had a few days left to work on the project, and we were deciding where we wanted to meet up to work on the last part. One of my friends offered that we work at somebody's house. I was against this since I didn't want this guy going near my house. Well, what do you know? I had mentioned before that my house was huge and we had an awesome entertainment center. They all chose to go to my house to work, and I guess I could have said no, but mind you, I was starting to feel like I was making a big deal of everything. Okay, so we work on the project at my house and all goes well. That's until after they left. That night would be a nightmare. See, my parents were gone that evening as they were on a mini staycation. This meant that I was home alone. Well, it had started to rain and I'd been on my computer typing everything we worked on. And that's when I felt my phone vibrate. Guess who it was? Yup, creepy guy.
Hey, it was really nice going to your house today. You are especially beautiful. Hey, are you sure you don't want to be my girlfriend? Come on.
I ignored it for about 5 minutes, but that's until he texts me again.
I know you have your phone next to you. Why don't you answer me back?
Look, I'm trying to work on the project. Sorry I don't have time to be on my phone all the time.
Oh, come on, that's a lie. I know you young kids are always on your phones looking at your social media and texting each other. Hey, while we're on that, why haven't you accepted my Facebook request I sent last week? Don't tell me you're too busy to use that, too.
Yeah, he was starting to get a lot more aggressive with the messages he was sending. It was getting to the point where I was starting to get a bit scared.
So, since you did tell me your parents were gone for the weekend, you wouldn't mind if I stayed with you. After all, we wouldn't want anybody breaking into your house now, would we?
Look, sorry, I just really want to get this project done. After all, it's due really soon.
Okay, whatever. But please don't forget to accept my friend request. There's some things I need to send you.
I later found out what it was he wanted to send me. Fast forward to 1 a.m., and I finally finished everything. I was so tired and exhausted, I just wanted to get some sleep. Luckily, our professor canceled class in the morning, which meant I could sleep in. So I go ahead and hopped on my PlayStation, and I played a little bit of Uncharted on the PlayStation. As I'm playing, I couldn't help but hear what sounded like something moving outside. So I turned the volume down, thinking the noise was coming from the game. All goes silent. Okay, whatever. Guess it was just my imagination. I go back to the game, but that's when I see my phone light up again. Somebody was now calling me. Seriously, at this time of night? Well, it was Creepy Guy. I chose not to answer it as I figured he could wait until tomorrow. However, I noticed he also left a voicemail. Annoyed, I played back one of the scariest messages I'd ever heard.
Hey, guess what? I decided to come back to your house to keep you company. Why don't you come downstairs and open the door for me? I've got plenty of fun toys we can play around with.
I froze. I run over to the window and, sure enough, I can see his car in the driveway. However, there are no signs of him anywhere. My heart starts to beat faster as I now start dialing for help. Quickly, I lock my door and window and I proceed to hide in my bathroom. While on the line with the operator, I hear a loud crash downstairs, which sends me into a full panic. This time, I felt a vibration on my phone, which indicated I got a text message. Still on the line with the operator, I take a look at what it says.
Well, you didn't open the door, so don't blame me for breaking in. Now, where are you hiding at?
I then start hearing footsteps making their way upstairs, and all the while, I'm begging the operator to send officers. Soon enough, I can hear his muffled voice echo throughout my house.
Where are you, Cassidy? Are you in here? No, it's just a closet. Maybe you're hiding over here. No, just an empty room.
The footsteps then approach my room, and I fear the worst.
Well, what do you know? The door is locked. Open this door, Cassidy. Come on, open it now.
He then starts kicking at my door, all the while I'm crying. Luckily, I started to hear sirens making their way down my street, which gave me some relief. However, this wasn't stopping him. From what I could hear, he manages to kick the door down, and he makes his way into my room. Moments later, he goes over to the bathroom doorknob, but he's unable to open it. Just give it up already, John. Officers are already here. The operator tells me they're already coming inside the house, so just give up. Sure enough, I can hear the officers make their way inside the house. They're shouting out loud to make their presence known. I then hear him run to the other side of my room, where I later found out he was hiding underneath my bed. Officers then make their way upstairs, and I yell back, telling him he's hiding somewhere. Sure enough, they find him hiding underneath a bed, and they force him out. But you want to know what was scary? Not just the fact he got in the house and was sending me those creepy messages, but the fact he had gotten a kitchen knife from my kitchen. Needless to say, he wasn't going to be making food with that. Anyways, he's taken into custody where I no longer saw him. Oh, and remember how at the beginning I told you I had the feeling he wasn't a student? I was right. He wasn't even enrolled into that school. He just walked into the classroom and figured he could get away with being a student. I guess he was looking for his next victim, so to speak. Oh, yeah, and remember how I said I thought he was taking videos and photos of me? Well, it turned out to be true because they found hundreds of pictures on his phone. Safe to say, our professor was understanding when it came to turning the project in. After all, when all was said and done, I deleted everything having to do with them and decided there and then never to give my phone number out to strangers. So, stay safe out there, everyone. Story number 5. Open the door now. This is actually a personal story that happened to myself, the creepy fox. Since I decided to do a video on phone call stories, I figured this would be a perfect time to tell it. To set you up with when it took place, this was back around 2002. I was in elementary school and I was about 10 years old. I remember it being myself, along with my sister and grandmother, who was babysitting us that afternoon. Anywho, we had just returned from school and we were watching Pokemon on Kids WB. I forget the exact time, but the phone rings as per normal. Now, since my grandma only spoke Spanish, it was up to myself or my sister to answer the phone. I go ahead and answer the phone, and I'm expecting it just to be a family member or a friend of ours. Instead, the next 10 minutes or so are spent trying to figure out what in the world was going on. I'll try more or less to rewrite everything that happened, so here it is.
Hello? Who is this? Hey there. I need you to open the door right now. I'm sorry, but who are you? It doesn't matter who I am. Open the door now, or I'm going to break in myself. Sorry, sir, but I don't want to open the door. Can I at least help you with something else? I need my medicine, so hurry up and let me in already.
You can imagine being that young and having somebody yell those things at you. Well, it's going to send you chills, because let's think about it. Somebody had seriously called me and now they were demanding me to open the door. What they would do then? Well, it was anyone's guess. Here's the strange part. Even with him yelling all of these threatening things at me, I didn't hear him outside. So then, where exactly was he calling from? I tried my best to figure out while I was trying to get this guy to calm down. I guess I could have ended the call, but my curiosity was getting the better of me. So I put the phone down as he continues to yell and shout. My sister and I look out the window, but we don't see anyone. Unfortunately, due to the living room window's angle, we can't actually see if anyone is at the door. As quietly as we could, we grab a chair and move it in front of the door peephole. One look through it, and there's no one. I knew now this was just some sort of prank call. That could be the only explanation for it. However, just because something didn't happen to me doesn't mean it happened to somebody else. As it turned out, he had called my number by mistake, which explained many things. However, it didn't explain why he wanted me to open the door. Well, a couple of days later, we were watching the news when a story came up. There was a man who had escaped a psych hospital who had broken into a home. He was claiming he needed his medicine. I'm not sure if both stories were related, but I did find out that he had called multiple homes demanding they let him inside, otherwise harm would come to them. Safe to say, I learned to never keep the doors or windows unlocked. Story number 6. He called me from inside my home. This story is a little bit more on the creepy side more than anything, so let me tell you about it, shall I? It was back in 2010. I'd been short on cash during my freshman year of community college, and I was looking to get a quick little job. Luckily for me, I had some family friends who were looking for a babysitter. This was perfect. My schedule lined up almost exactly, and I was able to work in the afternoons. One of these afternoons, I was babysitting while the parents had gone out for dinner. Thankfully, the kids were very well behaved, and they were busy playing Super Smash Bros. As they played, I was watching some videos on my phone. Ironically, it was scary stories. During my marathon of watching videos, I was suddenly interrupted by someone calling me. This was from an area code I didn't recognize, so I let it go to voicemail. After all, if it really was important, they could have left a message. The call ends and I unpause the video, but a minute or so passes and I'm thinking somebody had just dialed the wrong number. But just my luck, a notification pops up on the top of my phone. It's telling me I have a voicemail. Oh, great. So they did decide to leave me something. Annoyed, I close the video and I go to listen to the voicemail. Almost immediately, I could tell something about this call was off. For starters, it seemed as though the person on the other line spoke with one of those deep voice filters. Then, there was the next part that sent chills. He knew my name, or at least he had guessed it correctly. The message went something more or less like this.
Hey there, Taylor. How are you? It's been a very long time, hasn't it? I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. I hope you didn't forget about me. Say, are you home right now by any chance? I hope you don't mind if I make my way inside the house. After all, we're friends, aren't we?
I instantly dropped the phone in disbelief. There's no way some random person knew my name, and there's no way he happened to know my number, right? Well, I wasn't taking any chances. In case he was referring to the home I was in, I go and look out the window, only to see no one. Okay, well that's really weird then. About 10 minutes later, the phone rings again, and this time it's from the same number. Now I know I shouldn't have answered, but I do anyways.
Hello? Is this the person who called just a little bit ago?
Ah, there's my Taylor. Where are you at, girl? I'm waiting inside your room right now. My, how you've grown up. These clothes on your bed? Oh, they're so wonderful. I can't wait to see you in person.
Talk about strange. But the question is, was he really inside my home? I end the call and immediately I call officers. It was kind of an awkward situation, but in summary, I told them I thought there was somebody inside my house. Turns out, I was right. Waiting in my room with some old rope and tape was this creepy old man who had been going through all my belongings. Officers took him away and I never did see him. What in the world he had planned with the rope and tape? Well, I can only imagine. To this day, I have no idea how he got my number, how he knew where I lived, or how he knew my name. So I leave you with this. If anyone out there has ever had something similar happen, please do let me know. I'll be looking at the comments section of the Creepy Fox's phone call video, so I await your answers. Story number 7. Almost taken away thanks to a phone call. This one isn't your typical phone call story, but I decided to send it in regardless. This story is pretty recent, and for the most part, I think it's resolved. At least I hope so. Anyways, let me take you back to a year ago when I was a senior in high school. I used to be part of this drama club. Now, life in that drama club was pretty simple for the most part. My friend Amy was actually the one who found the club, since she was able to convince 5 others to form the group. Now, during the year, we expanded our group to 22. So, yeah, anytime we would meet up for the club, we would split up into groups and practice for a few hours. On top of that, we even opened up a Facebook group where we would post schedules and even future events. One evening, I've been on my computer working on some homework when I noticed a notification on my Facebook tab. I figured it was just a like or comment on my most recent post. I open it, and I notice it's a friend request. We would call the guy Robert. I took a look at his profile, but I didn't recognize him. I did, however, notice that he had 2 mutual friends. Okay, well, I figured what could possibly go wrong. I accept his request, then return to reading the article I was on. But not even a minute later, I see another notification on my Facebook tab. I open it up again, and now it's showing I have a new message. It turned out to be from Robert, and it says,
Hey, thanks for accepting my request. Hope to see you at the drama club sometime.
Yeah, you too. It's nice to meet you. That was it for that night. This, however, would only be the beginning. The next day, I meet up with Amy, and I briefly mention Robert. Oh yeah, he's one of the new members that joined the other day. I guess you weren't here, that's right. Anyways, he's kinda shy, and he is sort of a troublemaker, but he really likes what we do, so he'll be sticking around for a while. Once school was over, we ended up meeting for the club to do our usual activities. 10 minutes in, somebody looking like Robert steps in. He takes a seat next to me, and Amy continues to go over our plans for that weekend. We were going to be going on a camping trip, and she was checking to see who would be going. All the while, Robert kept looking at me funny. I don't know, it was a bit awkward, but I decided to stay cool. Now, before heading home, he wanted to know if he could have my number so we could talk about the club. I figured it was fine, and I exchanged my number. However, this was a big mistake. So, something I forgot to mention was I was actually trying to sell my old Nintendo 64. I went ahead and posted it on my Facebook group, so I wanted to see if somebody would want it. Almost immediately, Robert texts me saying that he had seen my posting.
Hey, so I can take that Nintendo off your hands if you want.
Okay, cool. Here's the address. See you soon.
Oh, trust me, you'll see me soon. Can't wait for the fun.
Something about the way he said that really rubbed me the wrong way. But whatever. In that moment, my parents stepped out to do some grocery shopping while I got the box ready to sell him. While in my living room, I noticed my phone vibrate. I look over and there's an unknown number calling. I was bored, so I went ahead and answered it.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hey there, beautiful. I heard you were all by yourself at home. Why don't we come over there and have some fun with you?
Sorry, but I think you might have the wrong number, sir.
Oh no, I have the right number, Bella. Your little friend told me all about you. Oh, I can't wait to see you.
What in the world? What little friend? And how did he know my name? At that point, I just nervously laughed, telling myself this was a joke. Who knows, maybe Amy or one of my friends was behind this. I went ahead and posted on our group, and I said,
Aha, you guys are really funny calling me like that. That's actually a pretty good one. Okay, so which one of you was it?
While waiting for a response, I started to think more about the call. There was no laugh, nor was there any indication telling me it was a joke. I mean, the only people who had my number were my friends, so this had to be some sort of joke. Finally, 3 of my friends responded by saying it wasn't them. Robert comments moments later, however, and he says, I'll see you in a bit. 20 minutes pass, and Robert still isn't there. I'm starting to get a bit annoyed since there were other things I wanted to do. So I text him and I say,
Hey, sorry, but I have some things I need to take care of. Do you mind if we reschedule for tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Hey, I was wondering, do you have a boyfriend? I mean, it would be a shame if I had to make him disappear. After all, I don't want him in the way of us.
Sorry, Robert, but what was that? Do you care to repeat what you just said?
I'm just messing with you, buddy. Don't take it so seriously. Hey, if you want, let's meet up at the park after school. You know, all the way by the parking lot. I'll go ahead and pick up the Nintendo from you. Oh yeah, and make sure to go alone. There's something neat I wanted to show you before I show everybody else.
Okay, sure. I'll see you then.
Little did I know that Robert had planned to do something right there and then when he got to my house, but he decided to back off at the last moment. So the next day arrives, but I don't see Robert at school. I figured he must have skipped. So after school, I go to the park and I wait for Robert. Once I sat down, I text Robert telling him I was now at the park. He responds by saying he was nearby.
Yeah, I'm in the parking lot right now. Come and meet me. It's the old blue Volkswagen. I'm just too lazy to walk over there.
That should have been my sign of things being wrong, but I really wanted the money. I make my way over, and I can see him standing next to the Volkswagen. Note, the sun is just starting to go down, and it was starting to get dark. This meant I couldn't see that there is somebody else in the driver's side. Anyways, I walk up to him and I open up my backpack.
Cool. Here, let me get the money from the car. Just wait a moment.
Right there and then, I hear the driver's side door open and footsteps hit the concrete. Robert opens the car and then he grabs my arm. He then begins to push me toward the car while I try to get away. In that moment, another man joins them and helps Robert out. Great. These two had set me up with that phone call, and now they were trying to take me somewhere. And what they had planned, I could only imagine the worst. I screamed as loud as I could, and thankfully I lucked out. A campus police car drove by, and these two let go. I now took the opportunity to run towards it. while these two quickly jumped into the car and drove off. You can imagine how scared I was after that happened. After telling the officer about Robert, they ended up tracking him down a couple of hours later. Needless to say, the school ended up expelling him. Himself, along with his accomplice, who recently been released from prison, were taken away. I guess Robert and him were good friends. As for Robert's phone, it was filled with a bunch of notes and pictures about me, and there were even these awful things he wanted to do. Safe to say, all of our friends, myself included, were shocked with the revelation. In summary, we all eventually graduated, and I moved away and never had anything like this happen again. So, I guess my word of advice is this: be careful with who you give your number to. You never know what kind of people are out there. Story number 8. He was hiding in the attic. To this day, I have no explanation on who this was and what their intentions were. If anyone has had something similar happen to them, then please let me know. For some background on myself, this was during my sophomore year of high school, so about 8 years ago. At the time, I was living in a small home which I shared with another roommate. We'll call my roommate Susie. Susie ended up leaving during the second semester because she was studying in London for the spring. She still ended up paying for the 6 months of rent, therefore she still had her own room and everything. However, this meant that the house was all to myself. I mentioned this because there would be no way she was prank calling me or anything. Something else to make a quick mention of is that I barely have any friends. Most of my high school friends went their separate ways, and as for the few remaining, I had a falling out with them and I never spoke with them. Needless to say, the only people that had my phone numbers were people I trusted. Okay, well, one day I had returned after a long day of studying, and that's when I noticed there was a missed call on her phone. Now, these were the days when we still used landlines. But anyways, I was thinking perhaps it was a family member of mine, so I go and play the message. However, what I hear absolutely scares me. It went something more or less like this.
How dare you call the cops on me, Lacey? Do you know what I do to girls like you? Ones that don't know how to be quiet? I'll make you this promise now. I'm gonna break into your house, and I'm gonna wrap this rope all around you. Then, I'll take you away out into the middle of the woods. That way, no one will hear your screams after I'm done.
After playing that message, I try to figure out who could have possibly left it. Thinking it was a prank call, I proceeded to call each of the friends who had my number. None of them had any idea what I was talking about. That's when I remembered Jonathan. Jonathan was this stalker I had during my first semester of college. He seemed really normal at first, so I didn't second guess when I gave him my phone number. After all, I thought we would just be calling each other in case we needed help with studying or maybe homework. But no, instead, he used this as an opportunity to send me a bunch of creepy messages and even stalk me. In summary, I had to get a restraining order due to how violent he was starting to become. That's also another reason why I transferred to a different school. Now, my nerves were starting to tell me that he was starting up with his nonsense again, but the more I thought about it, the more things didn't make sense. I mean, sure, he could have gone out of his way to look up where I was, but why? I mean, it did sound like Jonathan, but maybe that's just because that was my mind telling me it was him. Either way, I ended up ignoring it and nothing happened for about a week. One night, I'd been studying per normal, and that's when my personal cell phone started ringing. It was from a restricted number. Now, considering what a nervous wreck I was since last week, I was sort of hesitant to answer. Regardless, I accept the accept button, and I'm hoping it was just a wrong number. This time, I am met with a deep male voice that sounded just like the message from before. It's kinda hard to understand what he was saying since he was whispering, but the conversation more or less goes like this.
Hello, Lacey. How are you tonight? I see you're all by yourself.
Who is this? Jonathan? Is that you? You're not supposed to be calling me, so leave me alone.
Now, that wouldn't be fun, would it? I can't do that.
Look, knock it off already, okay?
No, I don't really feel like it. After all, I really like these pajamas you have on. Are those stars and planets? Oh yeah, I forgot how much you enjoy learning about science.
How do you know what I have on?
Seriously, though, how did he know? Well, what happens in the next few moments, I would never forget. I started to hear movement. Then I looked over to the closet. There's an attic entrance in my closet that leads to a small storage space. I look over to the closet, and that's when I can hear his voice becomes more audible. It was Jonathan. He had somehow sneaked inside the house and managed to hide inside the attic. I act quickly. Luckily, I always have pepper spray in my backpack, which happened to be right next to me. Well, Jonathan now walks out, and now he proceeds walking over to me with a large 2x4 from the attic. I take action. I manage to spray him just a mere feet from where I was. He falls to the ground screaming in pain, and then I quickly run out of the room. Needless to say, I run out of the house and I call officers. They show up in about 5 minutes. As it turned out, he had been staying in the attic for quite some time. They found empty food cans, water bottles, and even some blankets and pillows. I'm happy to say I never saw him again after that. Story number 9. He left creepy dolls outside my door. Back around 2004, I just moved out on my own after saving money for years with my parents. I was 22, by the way. So, I moved into a small, quiet residential neighborhood. I've been living there for about a month and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, one night I started to receive creepy phone calls, and for some reason, they'd always happen late at night. I still remember the first time it happened. I'd been watching movies late at night when the phone started to ring. Since I'd been watching a bunch of scary movies, it did catch me by surprise. I went to go pick it up, but the only thing on the other end was heavy breathing.
Hello, who is this? It's pretty late, you know.
No response. Ugh, whatever. A dumb call. The thing is, this would continue. It would pretty much be the same thing, calling at like 2 or 3 in the morning and not saying anything. Finally, it had stopped for a month, and I figured that finally it was all behind me. However, one evening I'd been making dinner, and that's when I heard something hit my front door. I was confused, but I ignored it. Then the phone started to ring. I head over, but this time I wait for them to leave a message.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, look outside your door. I left you a nice little surprise.
I was pretty nervous, so I grab a baseball bat and head over to my front window. The only thing I'm able to see was a van drive out of my driveway, then go off into the night. I open the door, and what is left behind I would never forget. There is an open box full of creepy-looking dolls. One of them even has a note attached. I open it, and it says,
This is just a little gift to you from your secret admirer.
Super creepy. Needless to say, I threw everything out and I moved back in with my parents. Nothing like that has ever happened again. Before we get to the last story, I just want to say thank you once again for making it this far in the video. Remember, if you'd like to see more, including previews and exclusive content, then make sure to be following me over on my Instagram, @TheCreepyFoxOfficial. Thanks. On to the last story. Story number 10. Outside in the cold November rain. Hey there, Creepy Fox. I've been listening to you for a while, and I have to say, I really enjoy your storytelling. I heard you were looking for stories, and boy, do I have a good one for you. This one's a little bit different in that it's still ongoing. Anywho, let me start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm female, 24 years old, and I work for a small insurance firm in Oregon. Our building's in a small shopping district that's right next to a set of woods. I always enjoy working here since I could walk onto the nearby trails to get my mind off of work. Anyways, I remember the day had been fairly cold and it had been raining non-stop. During my lunch break, I've been talking to some fellow co-workers, and that's when I felt my phone vibrate. Now, at the time, I'd ordered something from Amazon, and I also signed up for the voice message notifications. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, if you order something from Amazon, you can check a little box that notifies you of when your delivery is being made. Anyways, I was thinking that's what it was, but instead, I see a restricted number is calling me. Huh, strange. But I figured I'd calm my curiosity by answering it. What I met with was a man with a very deep, mature voice. I'd put him in his late 40s or so. Oh, and really quickly, I'll be using a made-up name from here on out so you can understand the story better.
Hello, is this Mari Anderson?
Hi, yeah, this is her. This wouldn't happen to be Amazon calling me about my order, would it?
Hey, what do you say I meet you at your place and I can show you a good time? I've got a bunch of dirty ideas in mind. What do you say?
I didn't even answer. I was so confused. I returned back to my colleagues confused, and I told them about what happened. How the guy on the other end knew my name? Well, this was something I mentioned to my coworkers, but they tell me it was just a prank call. Well, it was a sick one for sure. That's when I thought about the advert I put up at Starbucks. I was and still am an artist who works on commissions on the side. Therefore, I'd put up a flyer with my name, email, and phone number, so if anybody could call me for a request, they could do so. Out of like the 15 people who called, everybody was pretty kind and respectful. I mean, I even drew a little book for a mom who gave it to her daughter for her birthday. This was the first time I received such a call. Anyways, I go ahead and step out since everything was starting to get to me. While outside, I feel my phone vibrate yet again. This time, it says it's from a restricted number, so I don't answer it. Moments later, I noticed they left a voicemail. I really didn't want to listen to it, but I ended up listening to it anyways.
Hey, why did you hang up on me like that? I wasn't done talking to you. I want you to draw me something. Can you draw yourself? Yeah, that would be perfect. I'll frame it and everything.
Safe to say I blocked the number. Right there and then, I called the Starbucks and I requested they take my advert down. The employee tells me that it wasn't on their board anymore. Great. So what are the chances this sicko took it down and now he had my personal information? Even so, he couldn't know where I lived, right? I'm not sure. I did my best to forget about it and proceeded with the rest of my day. Next morning, I wake up and start getting ready for work. Now, sadly, my car was in the shop this week, which meant I had to take the bus. Anyways, I make sure to leave an hour early and I head toward the bus stop. I guess in me leaving in a rush, I'd forgotten to turn off the Do Not Disturb. When I arrived at the bus stop, that's when I finally looked at my phone. There are now 2 missed calls from an unknown number. On top of this, there are 2 text messages.
Hey, nice home you got there. You wouldn't mind if I joined you for breakfast, would you? We can discuss the art piece I mentioned.
The strange part was the call and text messages were made 10 minutes ago. That was more or less when I left the home. No, don't tell me he knew where I lived. As I'm pondering this, I get another text message. This one says,
Aw, look at you sitting all alone at the bus stop bench. Maybe I can help warm you up. After all, it's pretty cold.
I suddenly took my eyes off my phone and I looked around me trying to locate anyone that looked suspicious. The only people I saw were just a couple walking their dog and some kids playing on their porch. I did, however, see an old beat-up van with tinted windows. This was the first time I'd ever seen it, and I grew suspicious of it. I stared at it for what seemed like an eternity, and finally it drove off slowly. I tried to keep my composure as I told myself I was making a huge deal of things. But even so, how can you when some creepy guy seems to know your every movement? I make it to work on time, but during the day I felt so paranoid. Even with all the security and cameras, I kept telling myself I was being watched. After all, what if it was a coworker or someone I worked with behind this? Well, one of my coworkers decided they would copy the phone number down and give the person a call. Of course, they don't end up answering the phone. In fact, it said the phone number was no longer in service. Well, that's weird. Did they really cancel their phone in just the past 4 hours I'd been working? Either way, my coworkers and I try to figure out who could have possibly been behind the calls. That's when we do a reverse phone search. It was from a phone number in our immediate area. Creepy. Well, we would get our answer in the next few days. One night I was in charge of closing up for the night, and it was just myself and another coworker, Janice. While inside the insurance firm, I received a text message that simply said,
I'm outside. waiting for you.
My heart sank when I read that message. Was this man really outside in the cold November rain? Sorry, I had to use that pun. Anyways, we both then heard what sounded like someone banging on the front door. I peeked through the back room, and sure enough, I'm able to see a shadow of someone looking into the building. He had a phone up to his face, looking as if he was calling someone. Moments later, I feel my phone vibrate again. I answer it, and it's the man outside.
Hey, I know you're in there. How long are you going to keep me waiting out here?
Almost instantly, I go for the alarm, which then echoes throughout the whole building. This guy suddenly takes off into the night. Then we watch from the back window as he drives off in a dark and unmarked van. Luckily, one of the cameras outside was able to get a good picture of the man and the vehicle. Sadly, they never did find him, but they did find the van abandoned near an old dirt road. It's been 2 months, and I haven't received any more phone calls or text messages. I'm honestly really scared, but I've taken precautions since. I changed the locks on my doors, and I installed bars on my windows. I even installed a security system in my home. Lastly, I also adopted 2 wonderful German shepherds. I'm thinking about moving, but I don't really have anywhere else to go. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'll make sure to update you all in case something happens. Update. Hey, I hope you can include this update before you upload my story. I just wanted to let you all know that the guy was caught just last week. I've been noticing a suspicious man walking around my property at night. Thankfully, one of my neighbors is a police officer, and he noticed this strange behavior. After talking with him for a while, they were able to determine that he was the one who had been stalking me the entire time. What a relief. Even so, the precautions I took are still coming in handy today.